What's up, friends? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. As you can probably tell, I'm a little bit under the weather today, so I'm going to try to keep today short, but we are 365 days a year, nonstop, no matter what. So even when I'm sick, trying to get me not to talk about the Packers is a chore. So while I want to keep today short, you just never know. Maybe I'll go long. We'll see. But let's start off with an injury report. Just a laundry list of injuries for the Green Bay Packers, but the ones we need to know about: Eric Stokes is going to be out, Shemar Jean-Charles out, Romeo Doubs out, Devondre Campbell out, Chris Barnes is going to be doubtful, so he's basically out. David Bakhtiari and Amari Rodgers are going to be questionable. Bakhtiari practiced, so it seems like he's probably going to be good to go. Amari went out with a hamstring injury, so we'll have to kind of wait and see on him. The good news: Aaron Jones, Elton Jenkins, Allen Lazard, and Christian Watson have no injury status, so they will be good to go for Sunday's game against the Cowboys. Meanwhile, for the Cowboys, Anthony Barr is out and Zeke Elliott is questionable. So those were the main injury updates. The one other big injury note: Matt LaFleur did mention that it is unlikely that Eric Stokes is going to be able to play again this season, so it seems like that's going to be another season-ending injury. I don't want to put words in Matt LaFleur's mouth, and I'm clearly just kind of being facetious and joking here, but the way that Matt LaFleur said it is like it's like highly unlikely, or it's unlikely that he's going to be able to play again this season. The way that it was like said, it almost made it be like, well, you know, maybe if we would get to the Super Bowl, like he'd be eligible to play or something like that. But like, just the way he said it made me laugh. Of like, yeah, if you probably made a Super Bowl run or a D playoff run, maybe he'd be able to come back. But that's probably highly unlikely too. But either way, obviously not meant to make a joke about it. Serious injury for Stokes, and hopefully he can come back 100% and bounce back next season. Definitely a tough year for him when he was in. Just not a physical player at all. Did not want to get too involved in tackling. Then, as of course, the one time he does go in and make a super aggressive tackle, he suffers an injury that costs him the remainder of the season. So tough year for him. And like I said, wishing him the best of luck, and hopefully he gets back next year better than ever. All right, quickly, main topic for today is I've had a couple people DM me, ask me, post in the comments of like, all right, so what am I going to be watching for the remainder of the season? Clearly with the impression or the intention of like, all right, the season probably going to be a bit of a lost season. Listen, there's no reason to give up hope entirely right now. They're still mathematically possible to get in the playoffs. NFC is really, really bad. So if ever there was a season to be 4-6 and try to get things back together, this is probably it, because, and again, you have 7 teams making the playoffs in the NFC. There's some opportunity there. But man, if you watch this team on tape over the last 9 weeks, to think that they're going to be able to make any sort of stretch of wins over and over and over is really hard to believe. Not impossible, but hard to believe. But this team just needs a win and then to see what happens. So maybe they get the win versus the Cowboys, and then you can kind of see what happens from there. But the question has been posed of like, what am I going to be watching for, assuming that they're not going to make this run to the playoffs? So I'll go over that today. Before I get there, a lot of people will start talking about draft positioning and should they tank or should they lose. First of all, it doesn't really matter what I think, because that's just not the Packers. There's no way that Brian Gutekunst and Mark Murphy and Matt LaFleur are going to get in a huddle at 12:65 and say, you know what we should do? We should lose every game the remainder of this season. And there's things they could do, like, they could just go with a bunch of young players and make it so that it's less likely that they win to better their draft position. I did an episode once on like either an episode or an article, I forget, but like the art of tanking. But either way, I don't see that happening, and we're not there yet. Like, there is a advantage, in my opinion, to tanking if you have the ability to get one of the top 2 picks in this draft specifically. There are likely going to be 2 quarterbacks that either you are very much going to want to consider selecting, or you can get a just haul of draft picks for in exchange. So with that in mind, if all of a sudden they lose the next 4 games while trying to win, maybe that would be a conversation that you start having a little bit more if you were actually involved in, or like could get the number 1 or number 2 pick. But like I said, Green Bay's not going to go that route anyway, so it's probably not even a conversation worth having. So let's focus instead on what we should be watching for as Green Bay finishes up the remainder of the season, and what likely is going to be a bit of a lost, disappointing, frustrating season overall. Number 1 on my list is rookies, and we'll start with the rookies that are playing: Kingsley Enagbare, Christian Watson, Samori Toure, and Quay Walker. All 4 of those players are going to be in prime positions to get playing time the remainder of the season, like right now, right? Enigbari's going to start. Watson's going to get a lot of playing time, assuming he can stay healthy. Touré's going to get playing time. Quay Walker's going to start. Those four are going to get significant playing time. So, not only just keeping an eye on them to see what they can do, but also watching for improvement and seeing how better they can get with additional reps and additional snaps. There's nothing quite like learning on the job and getting those live reps to improve you as a player. So those four particularly. It's also fair to say that it's time for Devonte Wyatt to get more playing time. Zach Tom is the top backup right now, but with Bakhtiari's leg, he could go in at any given moment. Elton Jenkins still not 100% healthy, so there's another opportunity there. But also, as soon as the season is mathematically eliminated from playoff contention for the Packers, Zach Tom should be the starting left tackle. There's no reason to give Bakhtiari any of those reps at that point any longer. All of those should go to Zach Tom. And then as soon as Romeo Doubs gets back from injury, he will clearly have a role as well. So Watson, Enigbare, Touré, Walker, Wyatt, Tom, Doubs, all of those are going to be key players to keep an eye on the remainder of the season. Number 2 is miscellaneous young players. Players like Kylan Hill, Josiah DeGuara, Josh Myers, even John Runyon Jr. to some extent, TJ Slayton, Isaiah McDuffie, and maybe, if it happens, Jordan Love. There's still a lot of youth on this team, as much as this is a veteran-heavy team that was trying to keep a window open. There are still a lot of young players that have either played a lot of snaps or are about to play a lot of snaps for this team. And guys like Hill, DeGuara, Myers, Slayton, McDuffie, maybe Jordan Love are another core group of players that will definitely be a lot of fun to watch the remainder of this season to see if those guys can take a step. Because listen, you're looking at likely a much younger team next year. A lot of these veterans are going to be gone. And that really that's a perfect segue into number 3. This is always the time of year where I start thinking, you know what? There are going to be a bunch of players who play their last snaps as Green Bay Packers. Last year at this time, Davante Adams was certainly in that consideration, and it ended up being his last season amongst other players that are no longer Green Bay Packers. But I always enjoy, just kind of taking in those last snaps for some of these players because I'm going to have fond memories of a lot of these players. And if this is it for them, I'm going to want to enjoy some of those last snaps. So Aaron Rodgers, this could be it for him, whether he's traded, cut, retired, whatever, or even he could get into next season and some injury could happen in training camp or preseason and knock him out. And he could be forced to retire. You just never know. So Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones, his contract is extremely prohibitive for next season. This could be his last year in Green Bay. Allen Lazard, David Bakhtiari, Dean Lowry, Preston Smith, Adrian Amos, Mason Crosby, Randall Cobb, Mercedes Lewis, Robert Tonyan, all of those players are long-standing Packers who have a lot of tradition and history with the team and could be playing their last snaps as Green Bay Packers. So regardless of what the record is, I'm going to be enjoying watching those players because you just never know when they may be playing their last snap as a Packer. Number 4 is who continues to try to lead this team through adversity. It has been brutal. Nobody has really stepped up and taken the reins. I know they've, said things like Dallin Levitt's tried to, get the team rallied and things like that. This team just needs a leader, and I want to see which players are really stepping up and trying to get this team through this time and through adversity. And really, on the flip side, who starts to quit? Whose game just takes a nosedive and stops playing and stops trying? I think that's going to be very telling for the remainder of this season. Number 5 on my list is Elton Jenkins and to an extent David Bakhtiari returning to form. If Bakhtiari does play, can he play the remainder of the season without injury issue? Can he get to a point where he plays 2 games, 3 games, 4 games, 5 games back to back to back without having to miss snaps or miss games? That will be very intriguing to me. Elton Jenkins, it's not so much of that as more of he was close to an all-pro player before injury. He had his best game this season, just this last week, but there's been a significant drop-off in his play. Can he round back into form so that we can expect all-pro Elton Jenkins when next season kicks off? Those are a couple more things that I'm looking at. Number 6 is just try some crap, whether that's new returners, new schemes, new play calling, and what I mean by play calling is, does Matt LaFleur just focus on the team more the remainder of the season? Do you let Adam Stenavich call some plays? Do you let Aaron Rodgers just go nuts? Just say, you know what, Aaron, just take over. You call the plays. You do everything at the line. We're just going to give you full autonomy, F it mode. Let's just see, throw some things at the wall. At some point, Matt LaFleur for 3 years has had the burden of having to win every week. That's a good burden to have, clearly. But at some point, there is a time and a place where you just get to try some things. And if Green Bay gets mathematically eliminated, go out and try some things. Try things different, experiment, see what works, see if, play around with the offensive line a little bit, see if running is better at a spot. I would try Josh Myers at guard instead of center. I think he's thinking too much at center, and I think he and Rodgers get off kilter and not on the same page too often. Put Jenkins at center, put Myers at guard, see if it works different. Like, it's just try some crap mode, and maybe some things really work, maybe some things don't, but you still learn things from that, and I would definitely like to see them try some crap, at least as soon as they're eliminated from the playoffs. Number 7, I'm really going to be watching if there's any accountability for this team. Players like Darnell Savage and Sammy Watkins have played like crap. Is there any repercussion for it? Like, do they ever get benched? Does one of them get cut? You're literally to the point of like, and I know Savage is you can't really cut him with the way his contract is for next season and then picking up his option, but like, you can bench him. You can not play him. Like, send a message. Like, I want to see if there starts being accountability for players who are not holding their weight, and the expectation was there for them to, and they're just not playing good football. And at some point, you need to hold players accountable. Players like Darnell Savage and Sammy Watkins would be a great place to start. Amari Rodgers as a punt returner would be a great place to start. Number 8, I want to see if Brian Gutekunst gets a little creative. December 18th, 2018. Anyone remember that date? Anyone remember why it matters? In the scheme of things, maybe not like a franchise altering move or anything like that. But December 18th, 2018, Brian Gutekunst signed Allen Lazard off the Jaguars practice squad. Again, not a league-altering move by any means, but that was a huge signing for Green Bay. In order to sign a player off the practice squad, you have to pay them and basically keep them on the roster for 3 weeks. So you can't just, sign them willy-nilly and then let them go a week later. You have to basically give them a 3-week commitment. But this is the time to start trying out a couple more players and then maybe bringing a couple in, maybe a player that you had graded highly in the draft and that hasn't had a chance to prove themselves. A Bo Melton for the Seattle Seahawks. Seattle Seahawks had a phenomenal draft this year. Maybe their pick of Bo Melton was another one, and you go out and you get him. I can't remember if Melton was actually last year or this year off the top of my head. Forgive me, I'm sick. But either way, like, Melton was a really fun player coming out, and that would be a fun player for Green Bay to go sign and, give him a shot for a few weeks and see if he can hang. And if he can't, no harm, no foul. But if it's not Melton, who cares? Like, there's got to be somebody from some practice squad that you're like, yeah, we would really like to have him in. Give it a shot. See what you can. It worked with Allen Lazard. Maybe you can find your next Allen Lazard by doing so. Same thing with practice squad call-ups. Even if it's for a game or two, would love to see guys like Tyler Goodson, Micah Abernathy, Innis Gaines, Keandre Thomas. I think those are the top 4. I think Keandre Thomas can play at corner. Innis Gaines, Abernathy. I know they got 6 safeties on the active roster, so they're a little bit behind the 8 ball at the moment. Tyler Goodson, I know, again, Hill, Jones, Dillon, not a ton of opportunity there, but heck, just call Goodson up. Let him, kick return. Let him, get a handful of plays here and there. Just think there's some players on the practice squad that would be worth getting just an extra look at before the season is done. And then number 10 is just, can they improve 1 week at a time? This team is a little bit, maybe more than a little bit broken right now on offense, defense, special teams, mentally, all of it. That's not something that you can just feel confident of. We're going to go into the offseason and reset. This is something that you have to start getting right and better right now. And it's just incrementally better 1 week at a time. Can you improve fundamentals? Can you improve tackling? Can you make sure that wide receivers are actually running the right route? Can you make sure that the checks at the line of scrimmage are easy enough so that players are understanding them? And if they're not understanding them when they're easy, then there's accountability for that. This is a bad situation right now, and it can get worse. It very much can get worse. So like we talked about draft position, and yeah, that's a conversation worth having at some point. Like I said, it won't matter because 1265 won't do it anyway. But I think there's a lot more value in this team actually getting better and starting to right the ship, because you don't want to be that next team that just is inept and can't string together wins or get wins, period. This is going to take time to turn around, and it's just got to be a 1 week at a time thing. So I just want to start seeing this team playing a little bit better football. So watching the rookies, watching the young players, watching some of these, veteran Packers possibly play in their last season in Green Bay. Watching to see who leads this team through adversity, the return to form, hopefully, for Jenkins and Bakhtiari. try some crap, watch for accountability, maybe poach some players from the practice squad, call up some guys from your own practice squad, and just improve 1 week at a time. That's what I'm going to be watching for the remainder of this season. Sorry that I have got a little bit of a weird voice, don't feel 100%, but I still appreciate you joining me. Still going to be right back here tomorrow for a pregame show. Don't care how I'm feeling, so make sure to check that out as well. And hopefully the Packers can pick up a win against the Cowboys and start righting the ship. If not, we'll be back here either way, breaking things down and seeing where Green Bay needs to improve moving forward. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.